stop icing. You just got hurt, you just rolled your ankle, you just did something, you got some swelling, you want to ice it because that's what every practitioner in the world tells you to do is ice. We're gonna tell you why you shouldn't ice today and what you should do instead of icing. Now you can take care of acute injuries and get them to heal faster. The first thing we're gonna look at, we've got Will sitting here on the table, and Will has recently rolled his ankle playing flag football. It's got nice and swollen right now. I'm sure this feels great when I hold it like this, Will. But so what do? Most things we hear from medical practitioners is throw an ice pack on it. In 1978, Dr. Gabe Merkin came out with the RICE method. RICE simply means rest, ice, compress, and elevate, okay? That was the standard in the medical field for years and years and years. The funny thing is, in I believe 2012, Dr. Merkin came out and said that he was wrong. He said we shouldn't be icing, and these are some reasons why. The other things in there, we're gonna talk about it, but we have traded out the RICE method for something called peace and love. We'll talk about that in a second, but the reason we don't wanna ice straight off the bat is the very first stage of healing that happens in our body after an injury is inflammation. When you ice, you are essentially shutting down the first level of healing for the body. So all of a sudden the body's trying to kick on these healing processes and we're stopping it from the very beginning. We need to let that inflammation happen. There is a place for icing if you have insane amounts of swelling, copious swelling. Let's say you just had a post-op total knee replacement and your knee is giant. That could be some time to bring that inflammation and do some localized icing. But on the whole, this is not something we need to do. We need to allow our body to go through these healing processes. So we're gonna talk about what are the options with peace and love and what to do about your inflamed areas today. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Sean Hiller. I'm a physical therapist and a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and this is the Vulcan Blog. And today we are talking about peace and love over RICE. So the ice method or the RICE method is that we're gonna rest it. We don't wanna rest. In fact, the very first thing with peace and love is you want to protect the area. So let's break down the RICE method first. We've got rest, ice, compress, and elevate. So resting doesn't really do a whole lot for us. When we're trying to move inflammation out of the limb, when we're trying to get healing properties to come into the limb, resting doesn't do nothing for us. It just stagnates the area. You don't have a return of blood. The only way to get lymphatics to move throughout the body is through a muscle contraction. So if you're resting, lymphatics aren't moving out. That means all the trash that is building up in this joint is not moving out of there. Secondly, we talked about icing. Icing is going to stagnate the entire area. It's going to slow down everything in the area. Compression could be a good thing. You can wrap it in an ACE wrap. That's gonna help stimulate a little bit of that lymphatic return, help some venous return as well. And then elevate, that can help as well because you're gonna elevate and it's gonna let your body not move against gravity and actually funnel these things out of the way. So 2 of them out of the 4 are okay. But if we talk about peace and love, we got better options here. So peace and love, the first thing you want to do is protect the area. So Will's got an ankle here. It doesn't mean he needs to be stagnant. It doesn't mean he needs to rest it, but it does mean he probably doesn't need to be jumping up and down on this ankle day 1 after the issue. You want to protect it a little bit, but still contract it. So that's the P. We got the E. The E stands for elevate. We've talked about that one. That's a good one. We've got the A. A stands for avoid anti-inflammatories. Why would we want to stop taking some of these anti-inflammatories that we're told to take? Because it does the same thing as icing. If that first stage of healing is inflammation, then icing, which is an anti-inflammatory method, or taking anti-inflammatories is going to stop that first stage of healing. If you can avoid it because you're gonna stimulate healing faster, you're gonna heal better, and altogether your recovery is gonna be quicker. So PEAC is that compression. So again, we want to compress it. We've talked about it. It's going to help move some of the lymphatics out of the area and bring good healing properties back into the area. PECE, E again is exercise. And this is something the RICE method never talked about, is we actually want to contract this area. Again, contracting is the only way to move lymphatics out of the body. Lymphatics don't have any pumping mechanism inside of them. So we got to use our own body to do that. But also exercise is going to help increase the activation of an area. Whenever you have an injury, the first thing the body does is it shuts off power and strength to the area because it's trying to compensate for what's going on. It doesn't like it, so it shuts it off. Whenever we injured an area, like a ligament or a muscle, things tend to shut off a little faster. So using exercise is going to reactivate the areas and help stimulate some muscle growth and start to heal the areas. Anytime you exercise, you're gonna break down the area, but it's also gonna promote better building back whenever you get ready for that. L goes right along with E of exercise. L stands for load. He actually needs to put some load through this. He needs to walk on it. Maybe he could squat, he could deadlift, whatever he's able to do. I like to say this, whatever you're able to do, you wanna push your body to be able to do that. Except for being a little bit too dramatic and doing jumping and dynamic movements from side to side, that soon after an injury could be a little bit more detrimental to what's going on. So L, we've got O. O stands for optimism. Be optimistic about what's going on. You've rolled your ankle, you've tweaked your knee. It's not the end of the world. Be optimistic about it. We got great studies showing us that if you're pessimistic about an issue, you're gonna have worse outcomes than if you're optimistic about it. So just have a glass half full type of attitude. L-O-V, V is vascularization. That's where the exercise and the load comes in. We're gonna stimulate more blood flow to the area to help promote those healing properties. You can do some other things as well. We talk about blood flow restriction a ton on this channel. BFR is amazing for this because you have so much blood pulling in an area. It's going to stimulate a better healing response. We have a video on BFR if you want to check that out. I'll put that in the description. And then we have the final E, which is education. Educate yourself on what's going on. You can look up videos like this. You can ask a health practitioner, how do I need to figure out what do I need to do to help this heal as much as possible? Different limbs are gonna have different approaches, but overall, if you stick with this peace and love method, you're gonna have a better outcome as if you would have stuck with the rice method. So overall, we don't like rice, we like peace and love. Peace and love is going to help you to heal faster, better, and more completely, get you back quicker than you would be otherwise if you were doing the rice method. So guys, give this a try. If it helps, let us know in the comments, but otherwise we will see you on the next video.